All right, ladies and gentlemen and logo designers, we're going to do part 4. We're going to learn more principles of graphic design. All right, so proportion in art is the comparative harmonious relationship between two or more elements in a composition with respect to size, color, quantity, degree, setting, etc. What does that mean? It's like when you look at this, this is boring. So it's bad proportion. The size of this to the size of this is boring. If you look at this, this is good proportion. For whatever reason, our eyes like this. All right, this is too small, right? So this is too small for that. So if you look at these things, this is boring. We don't like this, but these look nice to our eyes, right? So there's particular proportions that human beings like. Okay, so harmony is an agreement between the shapes and the stresses and similarities of all the parts. So these things have good harmony. These things lack harmony. So if we were trying to do something like for Halloween or something to make us feel kind of off kilter, these would work good. So sometimes you want to use the lack of harmony on purpose. If you want things to kind of be smooth and just be normal, we could use harmony. All right, so what I want you to do is draw or cut and paste into Word a logo that has proportion. So an example, don't use this one in yours, but an example is Adidas. If you look at the size of the line to the little line, that's pleasing to the eye. So they did a good job of having proportion. What did the designer make a size comparison between the height? So answer this question about the logo you cut and paste into your Google Doc notes. All right, white space. So white space is where you actually draw stuff with the paper. So if you look at this thing, they drew I don't know, what is that thing, a candle holder or something? Okay, so that's the positive space, but if you look at the negative space, you see these men's faces in there, right? So you can see the difference. So there's the men's face, men. Anyway, so you can draw with the white paper. In the same way, if you look at this thing, they drew the cowboy's face with the white paper. So that's called using white space. So here's examples of they put the letters are in there. So there's a little heart using white space. The F is made with white space. You can see the cityscape in white space. If you look, the panda's not even really there, right? But your eye kind of fills it in and draws it in. So that's ideas of using white space or negative space is the same thing as white space. So draw, cut, and paste into your Google Doc a logo that uses negative space, and then answer the question. Make sure you label it as negative space so I know what you're doing. All right, another thing that we can do for our graphic design is repetition. The use of repetition to create movement occurs when elements which have something in common are repeated. Okay, so repetition with variety and so on and so forth. So if you look at this, what are the two elements of the repetition in the first logo? What is the repetition in the second one? How does the repetition in the second logo create motion for your eye? All right, well, in this one we have the squares are repeated, and then also if you look, there's a circle, so there's multiple circles in it, right? Okay, if you look at this one, we have shape, 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 and the way they did this, it creates motion because your eye wants to start here and move up. It creates kind of this thing that makes this thing look tall, and it's like it's leaning over, going to fall on you, kind of. So I want you to find a logo that uses repetition and put it in your Google Doc notes and answer the question. Okay, so look at this logo. I wanted to point this thing out. It has balance, right? So if you were to put like a scale right there, it would be balance on each side. It has proportion, so you see this thick lines has nice proportion to the size of the thin lines. They drew a lot of stuff with negative space, and then they use repetition, right? So you have repeat, 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 repeat. So a lot of times a logo will have a lot of different things, a lot of different rules being followed. All right, so color. Complementary colors are colors that are opposite to each other on the color wheel. Analogous colors are colors that are found side by side on the color wheel. Make sure you write this stuff in red in your paper notes. So if you look at the analogous colors, so if you put these two things together, they don't contrast very much, but they're kind of smooth and they go together. If you put green and purple, it is a lot of contrast. So if you had, let's say you had a yellow background, Well, you wouldn't do the words in green because they wouldn't stand out very much. But if you had a yellow background and you did the words in violet or purple, it would stand out because they're complementary. Okay, so the complementary colors are used to create contrast. So these colors create harmony. Okay, so hue, by the way, everything in red, make sure you're writing those down in your paper notes. Hue is another word for color. Saturation is the intensity of purity of color from white or gray to saturated. So this is unsaturated all the way to that is a very saturated red. Okay, to desaturate a color, you can add white, black, gray to desaturate it. So let's take a look at that. So this is a tint. You're adding white to this thing. This is a tone. You're adding gray to it. And this is a shade. You're adding black to the same color. So these are all called monochromatic colors because you're basically starting with the exact same color and adding white, gray, or black. Right? Make sure you're writing everything in red in your paper notes. Avoid contrasting hues from adjacent parts of the hue circle, especially if the colors do not contrast. So you can read this because yellow and blue are opposite each other on the color wheel, but these two colors are not. So this is not of effective. All right, quiz. What do you call colors that are next to each other on the color wheel? What do you call colors that are opposite side of the color wheel? Which type of colors would be better to have next to? Well, answer all these questions. All right. So unity is the hallmark of good design. It's the final result in a composition when all the design elements work harmoniously together. Unity in a composition is achieved when all the design principles have been correctly applied. So write that down in your notes. And the correct balance of composition or color that produces a harmonious effect. How is unity accomplished in this logo? Answer that question. And okay, that's it for part 4. Next one is part 5. I'm going to go over the assignments that we're going to do related to graphic design.